This book is for teenagers and for like horny teenagers who think they're special, you know, and like I'm like an old wizened man who knows I'm not special now.
Right. Well, you just described every teenager and then unfortunately not every adult. Hello, everybody. I'm Cody Troyer.
And I'm Brent Gaisford.
And we are the Hugonauts. This week, we are talking about the Nebulas of 2025, the nominees and the winner, because the Nebulas just happened as of the recording of this episode. So
very excited to tell you about all of them. And I got to be the hype man this week because for those who are watching the video, you can see Cody has a baby strapped to his chest. The new kid came. How are you guys doing?
She's 2 weeks old. We're doing well, but this is the time. This is how to get it done. And it's actually, you know, we're not quite to that stage yet where this would be utterly impossible. So it's kind of fun. And she just, the only issue is she's covering up my sweet Age of Empires 2 shirt that I got on the internet.
She's better. She's better. It's a better view.
Yeah, that's true.
Next time we're talking about the Hugos, the summer of new books. And we're really, really excited about those. Excited to talk about the Nebulas too, but the Hugo list this year is strong.
Yeah, there's a difference. You'll see between the two episodes. Yeah, I agree. And if you want to chat about those, we did a little impromptu book club with our favorite two from the Hugos. We were going to talk about sometime in July on the Discord.
So without further ado, who won the Nebulas this year?
Right. I mean, might as well just say that it was Someone You Can Build a Nest In, a novel by John Wiswell.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that lands on our list. But first,
this episode is sponsored by The Boy, the Cube, and the Elf by Brent Golombieski.
When Nico's parents vanish, his simple life on a quiet space station disappears with them. He flees with a strange new girl who appears on the station, while a sinister bounty hunter is after them both. This exciting kids' book follows their adventures as they outrun the danger and search for clues.
The Boy, the Cube, and the Elf is great for the kids in your life who are curious about sci-fi and is available at the link in the episode notes.
Sweet. Okay, so should we rank these bad boys? For those unfamiliar, usually for these lists, we always, we do the Hugos and the Nebulas. Brent and I split them up so we can possibly read all the books, especially for the Nebulas because they announced the nominees so late. So we're going to interview each other a little bit about each other's books. Unfortunately, Brent has numbers 4 through 6.
Fortunately for you, I got screwed, turns out. Okay, so our least favorite book of the nominees this year is Rakesfall by Vajra Chandrasekera. Consolation prize, though, they won the Nebula last year, so there's that. It's 304 pages, 9 hours on audiobook, and we'll give you just a little teaser. Some stories take more than one lifetime to tell. There are wrongs that echo through the ages, friendships that outpace the claws of death, loves that leave their mark on civilization, and promises that nothing can break. This is one such story. Annalyn and Leverett met as children in the middle of the Sri Lankan Civil War. They found each other in a torn-up nation, peering through propaganda to grasp a deeper truth. And in a demon-haunted wood, another act of violence linked them and propelled their souls in a journey throughout the ages.
So let me ask you my first question, because we've just been introduced to the phrase via Gordon on our survey episode, portal fantasy?
I don't even know what genre to call this. I would call this a fever dream. That's what I would call this book. It's there are sections of it in the far future that are more like science fiction. There's sections that are sort of like magical realism. None of them are like really linked up. It reads like it's like a dream but told in the language of myths, I would say. Yeah. Okay,
so Blood Meridian fever dream, or
no, Blood Meridian
my literal fever dream that I had last year when I had a fever.
Have you read anything that what's that guy's name? The beat who is like on heroin all the time, who wrote Naked Lunch? Which one was that? Is that William Burroughs?
William Burroughs.
Yeah, have you read Naked Lunch?
Not William Burroughs guy. Not a Beats guy in general, but William Burroughs particularly
there's some
creepy crawly to me.
Yeah, for sure. It actually really reminds me of Perdido Street Station. Perdido Street Station like distilled the essence out of Naked Lunch in an interesting way. But
But
anyway,
I love
this
Perdido's
I
Station.
know. I think you might like some parts of Naked Lunch. But where I'm going with this is Naked Lunch is like totally disconnected random stuff happening because he was super on drugs the whole time. And so you had like a very evocative imagination, but it was really confusing and disconnected. It felt like that to me. It was like some parts of it were like really pretty language, and there's a lot of talk about like blood and gore, and everyone like no one ever really dies. They kind of live forever. I don't know. I was just really confused.
Oh,
If you
well,
love
that's a
myths,
bummer.
though, and you really loved This Ain't a Bright Doors, I'd say this one is for you. I definitely think it's not as good as This Ain't a Bright Doors, but I think that's like who this book is for. If you're a huge like myth person,
Okay. So, and who is it not for?
if you want like a contiguous, narrative that with like a beginning, a middle, and an end, like that, yeah.
Okay, so it's experimental. It was, by the way, it was Allen Ginsberg like went to Morocco to find William Burroughs in a heroin den, an opium den, to like and published it. He edited it and published Naked Lunch for him. He made it happen. That's why it's so non-cohesive, because he didn't really write it. I mean, he wrote a bunch of random stuff and then it was compiled. Anyways, neither Ginsberg nor Burroughs, I think, ever won a Nebula, nor are they on this list. So let's move on to our number 5, which is what, Brent?
Number 5 is Sleeping Worlds Have No Memory by Yaroslav Barsukov. It is 300 pages long. There is no audiobook available. Let me give you the quick summary. So, refusing the Queen's order to gas a crowd of protesters, Minister Shay Afcroft is banished to the border to oversee the construction of the biggest defensive tower in history. However, the use of advanced technology taken from refugees makes the tower volatile and dangerous, becoming a threat to local interests. Shay has no choice but to fight the local hierarchy to ensure the construction succeeds and to reclaim his own life. Storytelling style was really different. How do I describe it? It's like, it's super abrupt and direct. Like there's an idea is introduced and then it's like immediately happening. There's not like a lot of like teasing or whatever. It's like you hear about something and then he's like you hear maybe the main character's in danger and then there's an assassination attempt like 4 pages later. So it's just a really different storytelling style. And so I did like
interesting. What have you seen that? Like, what would you compare it to? What are some comps?
That's
is there
an interesting
anything?
point. I mean, I haven't read anything quite like this. The world was kind of imaginative. The world is, I would say it's mostly fantasy. There is a portal, actually. There's some portal fantasy stuff happening here. But there's also it's like a tech level that never existed. They're building 1,000-foot tall tower with like huge ballistas that are like the size of a house on them to shoot down sky rafts, which I think are kind of like blimps, but they're not. And there's this alien / maybe different race of people that sort of has magical artifacts, but it seems like they're really interesting technology. Anyway, there's interesting stuff about the world. I think that was my favorite part of it.
Oh, okay. I was that makes sense. So you kind of liked it then. I mean,
sort of. The abruptness was tough because it made it hard to build suspense. An idea would be introduced and then it would immediately be resolved one way or the other. So that was interesting and different, but I didn't find it super engaging.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was asking for comps on, was like that style of introducing something like that. Because I couldn't really, when you're describing it, I couldn't really put a finger on what that would feel like. But it sounds like it felt a little bit rushed.
Yeah, it felt rushed and it felt, I consistently would be surprised. I very often be like, oh, okay, we're putting that piece on the table. We'll see when that comes back. And then it'd be 2 paragraphs later and be like, oh, all right, well, we're going to use it now then. So anyway,
Interesting. Yeah, that is weird. I just don't know what that would feel like. So who is this book? Let's flip it. Who's this book not for?
This book is not for, things are not explained real clearly at all. If you want clear resolution, I think this is not for you. The way the world works, what the deal is with this sort of portal and these other people, yeah, it's all not spelled out super clearly. There's a lot of ambiguity, which can be a good thing, but if you want something unambiguous, this is not it.
Who would love it?
I think if you want something that feels really different and foreign, and I don't mean that just in terms of like the language. I mean that in terms of like the storytelling style. Then I think maybe you should give it a try. Yeah.
Kind of interested in both of these novels now, for based on the way you described them. Maybe I will check them out too. Although this next one, I don't know, because it's 24 hours on audiobook, which
yeah. Pause. So next is The Book of Love by Kelly Link, which, yeah, is 23 and a half hour on audiobook or 640 pages. Here's the scoop. Late one night, Laura, Daniel, and Mo find themselves beneath the fluorescent lights of a high school classroom almost a year after disappearing from their hometown, the small seaside community of Love's End, Massachusetts, having long been presumed dead, which in fact they are. And then
see, that's fun too.
They get a bunch of magical quests that they have to perform. There are enticing things about the setup. I would say that it's extremely slow. Takes a really, really, really long time to get everywhere, and I mean that.
Or as my daughter would say,
baby audio on the show. Okay, so the book is told from multiple perspectives, and it does the thing where you see, like, the whole book takes place, it's 24 hours long, and I think the whole thing is like maybe 3 days. And so every very small thing that happens, you see from like 4 different perspectives, including like somebody walks home and then you like hear about what they saw on the walk home for like many pages. And then somebody else is like thinking during that time. It takes us a ridiculously long time to progress. So I found that really, really, really frustrating. Something exciting would happen and then you're like, oh, great. I can't wait to find out what happens next. Oh, wait, I forgot that I have to hear about that same thing that just happened like 3 more times. So yeah, that was very tough. Yeah. The narrative style in this one was what really held it back for me.
Dune Part 1, or the first half of Dune in that way? Foreshadow.
It's not, happens. Yeah, I mean, I guess
in a different way, same effect.
Yeah. The dialogue is pretty over the top, but I listened to this one on audiobook, and I think this might just be like, whatever. Some people like some people's voices, some people don't. I don't know if I found the dialogue weird or if I just didn't love this reader, but one of the two things, pretty frequently in the dialogue, I'd be like, oh God, why are we talking like this? They're teenagers who are like having sex with each other a lot. That's like a big part of this. This book is for teenagers. I should have said that at the beginning. This is a book for teenagers, and I'm an adult.
It's YA. Okay.
Yeah. So, well, I like some YA. It's not
right. But it's for straight down the middle, hardline YA.
Yeah, and for horny teenagers who think they're special, and like I'm like an old wizened man who knows I'm not special now. So yeah. Right.
Well, you just described every teenager, and then unfortunately not every adult. That's so what were some of the redeeming qualities?
I would say it was a really different, along the way it's set up, I was sort of expecting that it was going to be like, that I would recognize the magic system and the rules and stuff. And like, oh, this is going to be like some god that I've heard of before. But actually, no, it's all made up and different and new. And there's good and bad things about that, because when like at the end of the book, like some new thing comes out and is the resolution, and we hadn't heard about that before, that's like a tough way to resolve your book. But on the flip side, that's how you make like new mythology, right? Although you could introduce it differently. But anyway, yeah, so there's good and there's bad things about that, but it's totally novel. It's not like about the devil or Satan or whatever. Beelzebub, what other words can I think of for devil? But but yeah, it's so that was fun.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's funny because all of these, I'm like, okay, that sounds like it's got some interesting parts to it. Which is, I suppose, why they ended up nominated for the Nebulas. It's not like these are all terrible books.
Yeah,
I will say,
yeah. I don't. Well, I don't want to be like
you're the guy
I
who wrote these
literally
three,
would
so-
not recommend any of these books to anyone. Of these first three.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yes, I didn't enjoy my time with them.
Point taken.
I've read them, so you don't have to.
You're a Saint of Bright Doors guy, but not Rakesfall guy. And then on.
Yeah.
Do we also think it's a little weird that the Science Fiction Writers of America is 6 fantasy books for their award?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well,
and that it's always like that. What's going on with that? What's going on with fantasy?
It is still the SFWA. I think they've technically changed it to be the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America.
Yeah, they have.
They didn't add an F, so I agree with you. I don't know. I think that's what sells. That I think I think the love story, or what's it called, the love book, the Book of Love.
Love.
The Book of Love, a novel, because the Book of Love is a confusing title. That book, I think, has sold an absolute buttload of copies, because I think right now horny teenagers love reading fantasy books, basically. So yeah, I think that's why the Nebulas are like this, basically.
Which, I'm not a gatekeeper type. Read what you want. If that's what's getting horny teens reading, then good for them. But I see your point. I just think it's funny there's something happening. I think I generally agree with you that fantasy is just selling more than science fiction now.
Yeah, I think maybe it's like because people are maybe pretty pessimistic about the future right now and are looking for like hard escapes that just feel like totally another world. And sort of the point of sci-fi is to like extrapolate our world and explore things and think about the future. And so yeah, I think maybe just the pessimism of our times is not a good fit for that.
Yeah. I think the nature of it too can be no, I guess I'm wrong. There's a lot of like pretty easy to understand, straightforward sci-fi. I was going to say in general, maybe it's just my favorite stuff is like a little harder to like, can be a little harder to get into, like requires some previous knowledge, or at least like a lot of curiosity, wanting to learn about things and deal with some more complex subjects, where fantasy, it's easier to like just have a fun story than it is to make a fun science fiction story that also is like keeps you in it, because it's internally consistent. Its logic works, right? Because it will take you out of the story and not be as fun if the technology or whatever, the world doesn't work. Whereas in fantasy, kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah, for sure. I do think though, like, I mean, I think maybe I just got unlucky with the 3 books that I got this year, but I think there's plenty of fantasy that I like quite a lot. I just
oh, totally. I'm not saying anything about. I just have noticed this trend, and I wanted to mention it and talk about it a little bit. That it's like more and more fantasy stuff that are dominating these lists. So it's interesting. And as you allude to books, you getting unlucky in your book draw, I think you did. Because as we move to my half of the list, I liked all of them. One of them I liked a lot more than the other 2, but I didn't have a bad time reading any of these.
All right. So tell us what's number 3 on the list.
Number 3 is Asunder by Kerstin Hall, which is 20 hours on audiobook or 432 pages. And the setup is Karis Eska is a death speaker, locked into an irrevocable compact with Sebaster, a terrifying eldritch entity, 3-faced, 100-winged, and unforgiving, who has granted her the ability to communicate with the newly departed. She pays the rent by using her abilities to investigate suspicious deaths around the troubled city she calls home. When a job goes sideways and connects her to a dying stranger with dangerous secrets, her entire world is upended. So kind of it follows this character, Karis, and we meet others along the way throughout this world. And it's a lot about it's a little about like, socioeconomic class and social mobility. It's mostly about the adventure and the magic and the finding ways in and out of these realms and these rifts and tears in reality. There's some cool world building about like how the Eldritch has entered their world and how people, like different people, take different types of approaches to like using the magic. So it's like a little closer to like a hard magic system. It's also book one in a series. So I assume that'll get explored more as the series goes on. And I thought it had pretty compelling characters.
Is the main character
emotional.
like a private eye? That's like the vibe I got from the summary.
So that's, yeah, well, I was going to say after the summary, not really. That's what it feels like it might be at the beginning, but it's more like a character story about her and her journey. And it's more like traditional kind of, I guess, epic fantasy, than it is about like, the Tainted Cup, which we'll talk about next time. So good.
On the Hugo episode, not
an actual,
next book
yes.
on the list. Yeah.
Yeah, which is next time, which is the like a more Sherlock Holmesy kind of deal. But it was emotional, and the characters were well written and good. They weren't flat; they felt different from one another. Not like totally my cup of tea, and maybe a little too meandery in parts. There were some sections that I was like, "Why is this even?" Like that could have been, we could have lopped that out, and it would have been fine. There was no reason for this, side quest, end quote.
Editing is hard, and I feel like sometimes it doesn't. Editing is hard,
and sometimes it just works. Like different things work for different people. If you have side, ancillary content like that the characters do, like maybe it's not the most trim, the most trim story it could have been, but if people like that part of it and they like the rest of the book, then it's just extra stuff.
Yeah,
for them to have read and for them to get to know characters. But yeah, just kind of a not my cup of tea type thing.
Who would love it then?
I think who would love it are people who are looking for a more emotionally complex, modern values kind of fantasy world. Looking into characters who've led unfortunate lives, or the villains with too much privilege kind of thing, like the kind of the real world and a lot of like the politics of what's going on now, but interposed on this cool fantasy world.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then who would not like, I guess probably anyone who's this is kind of a classic case of like, if you're not looking for fantasy, which I say, not as like a broad sweeping statement, but just more because this felt like very fantasy to me. Like a lot of the tropes of fantasy, the little hero's journey and the way the magic works and the various, speaking with holy entities and the power exuding and the reaching inside for everything you have for one last ounce of power, that kind of stuff. So it's just a very fantasy tropey.
Okay. Well, I suspect the next book on the list may be that way too, having read other T. Kingfisher. Yeah, what's number 2?
Yes and no. Yes and no. A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher, which is 11 hours on audiobook or 352 pages on the real thing. Cordelia knows her mother is unusual. Their house doesn't have any doors between rooms, and her mother doesn't allow Cordelia to have a single friend, unless you count Falada, her mother's beautiful white horse. The only time Cordelia feels truly free is on her daily rides with him. But more than simple eccentricity sets her mother apart. Other mothers don't force their daughters to be silent and motionless for hours, sometimes days on end. Other mothers aren't sorceresses. Yeah, so this is actually I believe it's a inverted like reimagining of a Grimm's fairy tale. So it's about, the sorceress and her daughter. The sorceress can basically control her daughter's body, like Get Out, the movie, like shut her in her own mind and control her. She blacks it out, luckily, the daughter, but Cordelia. And they eventually, you realize the mother is kind of, using her powers to try to gain husbands for social influence and wealth. and they go to another town for that activity, and you meet some other new characters. What I really liked about this novel was it had a lot of really great female characters. Cordelia, as the daughter and the protagonist, kind of a helpless child, a good child character, but then also the mother is a little more complex than just an evil sorceress. She's, even though she has all these powers, still the only way she can find influence in this medieval world is through like trying to get with men who have power and influence, right? So she's a little powerless even within her own powers, which is an interesting thing to explore. And then the third character they meet at the second location, Hester, is an older woman who is the sister to the mark for the mother, this man who, the Lord. And she, as the sister, like stands to lose a little bit of her status and power and wealth if the man gets married. He's really nice, but the sorceress is trying to inject herself in, and Hester is automatically kind of sidelined as an older woman in this world, and treated as ancillary to it and powerless. And so it explores a lot of those things about being a woman, especially at that time, but just in patriarchal systems, that I thought was really well done.
Nice. Okay. Let's flip them. Who should steer clear?
It's hard to do a who should steer clear because it's not like a cut and dry. Like, it was a fine story. I'd give it like maybe 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
I enjoyed it fine. I lost interest a little bit towards the end. But I don't think anyone would like dislike reading it. If you just aren't interested in kind of a smaller story that's not as big of a fantasy novel, is on the epic scale, or something that explores, it is very classic medieval fantasy based on a Grimm fairy tale. So
okay.
There's that. But I think you would love it if you have, if you want to read some good characters, and it's not that long either. So it's a good trim little novel.
Sweet.
With some good ideas and characterization.
All right. Well, for those who are paying attention to who won the Nebulas this year, you may have realized we have not yet mentioned that book.
Mm-hmm.
What's our number one?
Okay, but before we get into it, a final thank you to this episode's sponsor, The Boy, the Cube, and the Elf by Brent Golumbieski. The book follows a pair of youngsters on a grand adventure across the galaxy and would be great for the kids in your life who are curious about sci-fi. It's available at the link in the episode notes. Okay, luckily our number one finally won, which I don't think it has before. This is Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell, which is 10 hours or 322 pages. And the setup is Shisheshin is a shapeshifter who happily resides in an amorphous lump at the bottom of a ruined manor. When her rest is interrupted by hunters intent on murdering her, she constructs a body from the remains of past meals, a metal chain for a backbone, borrowed bones for limbs, and a bear trap as an extra mouth. So I'll just leave it there. Shisheshin goes on a little bit of an adventure and meets a woman named Homily, who she begins to like, the first person in her life she's had feelings for. However, Homily, his family is looking for her because they believe that she has cast a curse on their family. So she doesn't know what to do about this. She's trying to pretend to be a human, but she's a monster who can create herself into a bunch of different parts, but also she's easily hurt by certain things. People are easy to manipulate though, so she's good at that too. It's just a really weird, interesting novel. Kind of like a John Gardner Grendel. I feel like he started the trend, maybe I'm wrong, but he wrote a novel in the 70s or 80s that was Beowulf from Grendel's point of view. It's kind of that deal. It's like, what if this shape-shifting monster that everyone's hunting is actually just like trying to be left alone?
Trying to hang out in the goop at the bottom of the ruined house.
And the goop is right. Hibernate in the goop. And everyone keeps messing with them and putting their emotional troubles or their ostensible reason to take power and, use the army on her. Plus, I love the name Shisheshin. Really fun.
Yeah, that's it. I can't believe so I saw it written first and I was like, what is this? And then as soon as you said it, I was like, oh my God, what a genius name. It's such a great name for a shapeshifter. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, she, and I really like the characters. I like Shisheshin. I like Homily. I like the villain's motivations are really good. The villain is an interesting character. There's a great twist in the novel, and
are they trying to make soup out of the shapeshifter? For some reason, this goopy shapeshifter, I'm really imagining would make
you
like
can't
a good
get the
dish.
soup out of your head. Get the soup out of your head. No, they're not. To clarify,
okay, it's not soup. It's not a soup related villain. Okay, all right.
No. They don't, as far as I know. SFWA, regardless of the letters that are connoted in the title now, does not allow cookbooks. Still on the Nebula's list. But I just really liked this novel. I'm glad it won. It's really fun. It explores a lot of familial issues, familial trauma, and a bunch of other topics. The characterization is great, and the plot is fun too. So I was a fan. Also, the one more thing I'll say about it is, let me pull up my notes here. The writing, there was really good writing. John Wiswell has excellent writing, and he had these excellent lines that really stuck with me. One of them, hatred is the fear people let themselves enjoy. And I was like, just has a bunch of those little one-liners that are like really great writing and thinking. That is something I love about the medium of writing. And so I really enjoyed that about the novel too.
Interesting. Yeah, this is the one that I'm like really excited to read. Having heard about yours in my pile. Oh well, sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some.
Yeah, put it on the pile, buddy.
Oh yeah. Cool. All right. Well, dude, I wanted to say thank you so the baby came a little bit early before our last episode came out. So Cody had a newborn at home and was like days old, was editing our last episode to get it out. Now you're recording with a babe on your chest. Anyway, you're killing it for our side hobby that we do for fun. So anyway, thanks for still hanging with me.
I love it. Of course. It's the best. I totally enjoy it. Well, we are excited to see everybody next time for the Hugos, and this one will come out before the Hugo Awards, so we may get it wrong again.
No, we're going to get it right, because there's one book that's so freaking good. If it doesn't win, I don't know what I'm going to do. I won't do anything, but I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah, me too. That's a great way to put it. See, you are a mature adult who doesn't think he's special. Good for you. And fun as always, man. I will see you next time.
For sure. Later, man. Keep reading, everybody.